Hello, retro fans. Today it's the start of a new project, and this is something that is waiting on my shelf for quite a long time now, but I was busy with a lot of other things, but I decided now, since all of the FPGA SID adapters are shipped, I'm taking a break from the FPGA SID stories and topics and all that things, and work on something that's more, well, let's say, back to the roots, but well, as usual, it's not going to be so old school. It's as usual a rework of a C64 with a lot of additional things, a lot of new things, and what I'm talking about is basically this nice C64 Aldi, and it's a bread bin case with a different color. It's more grayish than brown, and it has a white keyboard with the PETSCII characters on front of the keys, so not on top like for most of the C64-2 models. And as a very first thing, I would like to have a look inside, and especially I'd like to check whether everything is working fine. And we're going to use the Check 64 for this. And as the next thing, I'm going to replace, kind of as usual, the video modulator against something new. And this is what we're going to cover after the check, so I'm not going to talk about this. And right now, I mean, but later on I will do so. And as the very first thing, we have to get rid of some screws, and we will have a look inside. So, quite simple. Just those 3 holes at the bottom of this case, and then we should be able to open it up quite gently. And usually they tend to hang a little bit in the back. But here we are on the inside of this nice C64, and as you can see, it is a 250/469 board, and it has a very interesting LED connector. That's the very first time I see something like this in a C64. Usually they are black and flat, or they are white, but I do not have this type of shape. Interesting. So, and it looks fine so far. Someone has already added some heat sinks to the SID, the VIC and the CPU. And beside this, almost everything looks like stock. I think this screw has been changed sometimes, but anyway, that's not going to be a problem. And now we have to add some video. And our Check 64 with all of its dongles and connectors to see whether everything is working fine. And indeed we need some power. Going to get from here. Feels like it's getting shorter every day. And now let's see whether we will get some picture. And here it is. Looks very nice so far. Got no sound. I have not connected the sound yet, so not going to hear anything at all. But that's going to be the second concern. And as we can see, everything is working fine. That's very nice. So we do not have to hunt down any problems on the board right now. And this leads us to the next thing. And this is going to be a small package I have received from Austria. And looks not so impressive at all at the very beginning, but as you can see, it looks very, very techy. And there are some more things we're going to need. So let's see whether we can get this out of the box or out of this. Back. And there's some kind of adapter. And as you may guess already, since I was talking about replacing the modulator, this is going to be something very new, and I'm not even sure how I found this. I think it was mentioned on either Twitter or I don't know. And this is an so-called FPGA replacement for the video modulator, the original video modulator. And this is going to provide a component output for the C64. And this is indeed very new. I haven't seen this before. So this is the stuff we're going to need to add this to our board. And surprisingly, yes, we got two connectors here. I was kind of in doubt that this is going to fit to the C64. So this is what we're going to address later. And the idea is that this adapter is mounted in between the socket and the VIC, and it gets a couple of signals from the VIC which are required to create a video signal, and then this is fed into this PCB, which looks indeed pretty complex, and this is creating a component output. And it is on GitHub as well, so I will post a link in the description section so that you can have a look. And this can be updated as well, and we have a couple of different settings for this adapter in terms of output resolution and things. And I'm pretty excited to see how this is going to work. And in order to do so, we have to switch off our C64, get rid of all those connectors here, and have to get the board out of the case, and then we have to start the soldering. So keep this in range, perhaps we're going to need this later on. And now we have to do some unscrewing. Let's see whether I can find a small box. Oops, it's full. It's full as well. So let's move that to this place here. And this is already containing some screws. So basically I had the idea before, and now I'm running out of boxes. Oh no, here we go. So we are able to keep everything in one place, and I'm not going to mix up the screws later. And I hope that's all. Yep, indeed. So, and then we need some desoldering. It's going to be a bit noisy, so perhaps I'm going to calm down the microphone a bit and crank up the music. So this has worked pretty good so far. And now we just have to bend those little thingies here. And then would be able to get this out of this. Always a little bit tricky because it is almost impossible to get rid of all the solder material. So it requires indeed a small amount of force. But it is working fine so far. And here we go. Very nice. See some corrosion here, but that's not very serious. Look quite okay. And now we may power up the soldering station as well, because we need to solder some pins to this PCB. Shouldn't be very tricky. Just have to find them here. Just wonder why we need so many of them. Four, 2, and 1 and 1. Also we got some spare ones. And let's go. So usually I just solder one pin, check the alignment, and then I continue with the others. Otherwise it's going to be a little bit tricky to adjust the position of the pins, and especially on a PCB like this, where we can see that we have a lot of small traces here. It is very sensitive, and it's very important that we're not going to bend the pins, otherwise we may break some of the traces, and this is actually very tricky to find. But this looks good so far. Yeah, I think this will work. I have never used something like this before. That's brand new. And as I said, this project is available on GitHub, but I was in contact with the creator, and he has produced a very small batch of these adapters, and I'm really excited and want to see this. The issue is that actually I have no device that's able to work with component video, but I got an adapter, and this is hopefully going to do the trick. Usual alignment check. I think it looks fine. We have to pay attention that we're not going to desolder some of the SMD parts here. It's pretty tight here on this board. And now just those small 2 pins for the side. I think that's more stability thing. Probably not going to be very complicated. The tricky thing is that this ground area is connected to almost the whole PCB, and this requires a lot of heat, and therefore the first attempt wasn't working. I really have to heat this very good. This looks much better now. So I think this looks good so far. Everything is soldered. And I think that's probably all we have to solder. Well, except that we have to solder this onto the board again. So oh, it's still a bit tight. We may have to change a couple of things here to make some space for this huge PCB thingy. So I just recognized that this is not working the way I have expected this. So these pins are not fitting into these 2 small gaps. So this is more or less something that just keeps a certain distance. So we may have to turn them around so that we got some kind of shorter pins. Or I think I'm going to just simply shorten them a bit. I mean, we got 2 spare pins and connectors like this. It's something I have many of them. So now it should fit a bit better. Looks like one of our connectors is a bit tight. And I'm not sure whether we're going to mount this very flat on the board. I would like to have some kind of distance. So I think I'm going to replace the pins later, when I know that everything is aligned in a good way. So I think let's start and put this onto this board, and we need some solder material for this. Just one thing, and then we can have some fine tuning. So I think this looks good. Do another one on this side. And then do it here. This will take some heat. Basically have to fill the whole gap with this. So, will it stay in place? Yes, I think it will stay in place. It looks good so far. And let's do the other pins. Now the ground connection eating up a lot of heat as well on this part. That's fine. And just some remaining parts here. And that should be everything we need to do for now. So look, alignment is fine. Looks nice and stable. Some excessive heat? No. So we can put it back. Get rid of the pins, that's pretty dangerous. So now we have to get out the rig. And then we have to place this adapter in between. It's very tight here. Go. And then it's going to be a challenge to get this cable into the right position. So I assume you have to do it like this, because here's the notch. This fits indeed pretty tight. So perhaps it would have been nice to have the connector on the other side, because there's a little bit more space. Here we got some capacitors and a clock chip, and this is pretty tricky to get onto this again. And now we have the connector, which we may have to fit in a kind of 90-degree angle fashion or so. So this looks quite okay to me. And now we put back the wick. Oh. And that's basically, I think, all we have to do. There are no parts left. And let's give it a try. And as I said, we're going to need an adapter for this. And I got this Ligawo component YPBPR adapter, and we can even feed in audio here, and then we will have an HDMI output, which is somewhere here, and those thingy need some power as well. So let's make some space that we can everything get together, and we need a special cable with 4 connector 3.5mm jack that leads to 3 change outputs, and I'm pretty excited. The tricky thing is going to be to find the right mix, because this is basically an old video/audio cable, and basically the colors are not correct, so we may end up with a strange mix of colors, but basically we should have at least some picture. And as I said, we're going to need some power for the small box. It's just going to be here, and we need some power for our C64, and my phone is ringing. Let's let it ring, and let's have a look. We got a picture. Well, it looks horrible, but that's, I think, a problem of this connector. And as we can see, the output frequency is wrong. Let's see whether we can change something. Invalid format, okay. But this has worked so far, and at least I'm pretty excited that we got a picture. That's much better than a few minutes ago. And usually we should be able to switch to 50 Hz. Here we go. 1080p 50 Hz. And well, that's okay, this is the scan line effect, which looks indeed a bit strange to me. But anyway, we maybe don't have to use this. And I will have a look at the documentation why the quality is a bit poor. Got a lot of this noise and disturbance on the screen, but basically beside this it looks pretty clear. So there's no shattering, no bar effect, something like this, no grid, and we got an even distribution of the color, and perhaps we can have some fine-tuning. Maybe we have to add a couple of more ground connections to get the signal more stable. Actually, we are just using one from the pin, and here on the back on the board, and the description was saying that we may have to use more ground connections. So GB Plum 1 solder bridge. What this is? Here. Close 9 volt, open 5 volt. Okay, it's open, that's fine. So that's not wrong. For this temporarily connect one of the GND 345 somewhere to the C64 ground. Okay, so perhaps it's not required to add more ground connections, but we are able to color signal reprogramming from the C64 stored persistently on the FPGA. So it looks like we can have some programming of our color signals as well. And well, basically, I'm not going to make this any longer. The signal is not perfect yet, but I think we will come there. And basically, beside the small issue with the cable, everything has worked fine so far, and I'm pretty happy that everything is still alive, so we haven't killed something. And well, as usual, thank you very much for watching. I will keep you informed about the progress of this board and what we're going to do with all those modifications. And as soon as I have figured out how to get a more consistent video output, I will post the update as well. And well, as usual, feel free to subscribe if you want to stay informed about further progress, and feel free to support me as well on Patreon or Ko-Fi, for example. And as usual, I will add the links to the description section so that you can follow this very interesting project from, I think, Rainer Graffel from Austria as well. As I said, it's on GitHub, and it should be possible to build something like this by yourself. And yeah, that's all for this episode. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time. Have a nice day. Bye bye.